Welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm Charlie Paparelli, and I am your host. And this show is all about entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. And I've been a 30-year angel investor, and during that time, I've learned from entrepreneurs how to start companies from scratch and how to grow them into valuable enterprises. And today, I have a very special guest who's been very successful and is going to share his life with us. And I'm looking forward to that, as I know you are too. This Charlie Paparelli Show is published as a podcast, but also as a video interview. The podcast you can get on your normal podcast listening stations, and also the video is on my YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube. If you don't want to miss one of these episodes, please subscribe at paparelli.com. Just to submit your email and you won't miss one. Today, my special guest is Sid Mookerji. He's a friend, and he's also a community developer and a very, very successful entrepreneur, and now venture capitalist. In fact, he's the founder and managing partner of Silicon Valley Ventures. He is also the founder and CEO of Silver Spirit Global, and I'm not sure what that is, but I'm sure we're going to learn in this interview what that one is. He's been doing it for 5 years. He's the former entrepreneur in residence at the ATDC, where he specialized in retail. He's the founder of SPI, which stands for Software Paradigms International. He founded this company and stayed with it for 22 years and 9 months, and then exited to private equity very successfully. He's a leader in the Atlanta tech community. He joins me in that. He funded the retail sector for the ATDC to get them pointed in that direction. And he's also a philanthropist in our community in advancing tech and entrepreneurship wherever he sees it's needed. He is a giant of a leader, this man. Everybody recognizes Sid. He's insightful in understanding what entrepreneurship and growing companies is really all about. Very intelligent. But what he's best known for in our community, which is interesting, is his kindness and his compassion. So all this, and he's known for his kindness and compassion. So Sid, thanks for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you here and having you sharing your life with me and with my audience.
Hey, good afternoon, Charlie. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Well, you deserve it, Sid. So what happened? One of the things that I found when I went from entrepreneur to angel investor, and I know that you made that transition before you got into venture capital and all, is what was that transition like for you? That's two different occupations. And most entrepreneurs, I find, they don't see it that way. They just say, I can really help people. What did you learn from that transition?
I jumped into it, Charlie, and a lot like you, you do a lot of things without really expecting financial gain from it. And my objective really was to make a difference and to give back to the community that made me successful, give back to the city, which has been home for so many years. And I saw the opportunity to do that through being an angel investor first, and also being associated with all these new things that I'm working on. But for the angel investing piece, definitely, the objective was really not financial gain as much as help startups, help entrepreneurs not make the same mistakes that I made when I did not really have this ability
I see. Yeah, but it's interesting, it's one of the things I find is interesting is that you said I wasn't expecting financial gain. Now that's different than when I got involved in it. I had some money, but this was back, when I was 40 years old, I still had to make money. So I had two objectives. One was I was going to build wealth and also to build income. So that sort of set my help form, I should say, my investment thesis. So I had to do that. And also I worked in, I actually did investments in services. But here you are saying that the financial rewards wasn't a motivator for you at that time when you got started. How long ago was this, by the way?
This was after my exit from SBI. This was in 2016, late 2016.
Yeah.
And Charlie, my thing was walking into angel investing. I realized, first of all, that those are typically hit and miss. There's a big possibility that the companies that I'm going to invest in may not even be around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whoever asked me and said, well, what do you expect to kind of, gain from this? Even though, of course, I tried to make decisions which were driven by the possibility of success, by looking at the quality of the founders and so on. But mostly it was, well, you know what, I don't have any expectation. If anything happens, anything positive happens financially, that'll be great. But, I've learned a lot since then. And definitely there is huge potential in this.
When you look back at those original angel investments, okay, that you made, those first few,
Yes.
You said, I've learned a lot since then. What were you doing then that you're not doing now? What is it that changed for you that said, I need to sharpen my sword a little bit on these?
Yeah, no, I think I have gotten better at understanding the characteristics of founders who have a chance to be successful. And usually it has not to do with what the company is doing. It is to do with whether the founder is capable of stomaching the difficulties that any company will inevitably go through. So that's the biggest thing.
How do you judge that, though, Sid? Because they all say that they're completely committed to this thing and it's going to be great and it's going to be the next billion-dollar company. So how do you figure out, is this guy for real? Is this really going to work? Is this his heart? How do you do that?
By listening to him, listening to them, speak with me as a potential investor, listening to them pitching other investors as well as other and potential customers. Those really are great indicators as to how they are projecting themselves. Are they fully committed to it? Are they willing to go out on a limb and do things which will make them uncomfortable, but nevertheless make them successful? So it is subjective, no question. Do I still make mistakes? Yeah, sure I do. But definitely at the end of the day, the committed entrepreneurs who I want to support.
What was the most, why did people, when you first said, I'm an angel investor, why did people come to you? How did they find you? And that's always a question that angel investors always say, well, if I come out of my company and I've cashed out and I do have some funds that I want to commit to angel investing, I don't even know how to find those deals.
Yeah, no, that's right. Again, like I said, my investing post my exit has really not depended entirely on early stage investing, early stage companies. But I joined organizations.
Did you say it's not always early stage company?
Not only.
Oh, not only. I see. Okay.
Right. So a substantial portion of my investments is in other kinds of investments.
Okay.
This is one asset class that I focus on. Has gotten bigger with the venture fund and all that.
We'll get to that.
Exactly, right. But I joined organizations to help entrepreneurs, ATDC being one, Thai being another one. I started going to Thai angel meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I started going to your angel lounge, and I met lots of good companies there. I met lots of other angel investors who taught me a lot. And I met with lots of companies who were pitching. And once people came to know that I was looking to invest and I also had time to help them out, I had a lot of people contact me directly as well.
So what did they see in you? What did they see that would be a real value add to them besides the money?
Yeah. Connections, of course, but
okay.
I put it in the same category as money. But also, many of these founders don't know how to scale. You need a completely different skill set, and a completely different team, as you know, to go from 0 to 1 million in revenue, and then from 1 to 5 and 5 to 50 and 50 to 100, very, very different. And some of these founders either don't know how to do it, or they just don't know how to go about making the changes that are necessary.
Are
So
these
that's
are the entrepreneurs that you've been dealing with, or that you found yourself investing in, were they early 20? What age bracket were they in? What kind of industry expertise did they have? How much business experience? You follow me? Because you
yeah.
talk about they don't know how to scale. Well, if you get somebody right out of school, he doesn't know how to do anything, right? If you get somebody that's 40, it's different. So where were you?
Well, I mean, it was all over the place, Charlie, and even 40-year-olds that have been very successful in industry, working for corporate America,
Yeah.
for them to then launch a company, and that's very different.
Mm-hmm.
In one case, you have an expense account, you have a P&L, and you don't really have to worry about some aspects of the business. And in the other, I mean, you are responsible for everything: building teams, hiring people, firing people, figuring out how to reduce your costs. Not everything belongs to one person when they are within in an executive role. So they might be very successful in what they did, but they don't know many of the things that entrepreneurs need to know.
One of the things that you said is they don't know how to scale. They don't know how to get to that. And to me, I think what's critical that takes a lot of risk off the table is to get to that first million. Because if I can get to 1 million, if that entrepreneur can get to 1 million, then it's just a matter of how experienced, how fortunate, are they in the right market, all these other things to kind of move you to the next stage. But what do you find is what's necessary to get from that 0 to 1?
The biggest thing is a clear message, which is delivered consistently and with passion.
Okay.
That's it. Okay, and I think people don't know how to say it. I mean, there are so many startup founders who have a grand vision, no question about it. But nobody wants to hear about a grand vision from a company that has no revenue as a potential customer, right? I mean, you want to know, okay, what specific problem of mine are you going to solve?
Yeah.
World hunger comes next, right? So that's really what, and to teach them to do that and to keep at it, keep refining the message and delivering it consistently multiple times is that. The other thing that people don't necessarily know how to do or how to handle is rejection. You and I know that, for investors as well as for customers, you expect a significant percentage of them to say no to your request.
Yeah.
And many just don't know how to handle that. I mean, it's a way of thinking. And that's really something. That's the other thing that I really try to help them out.
So a real entrepreneur. So if you're not an entrepreneur and you're starting a company, the rejection can actually just destroy you. In other words, it must not be a good idea, and move on. In effect, I'm just defeated, if I will. But it is interesting how there's this very thick filter for entrepreneurs that I found, and you could say some pretty awful things to them about what they're doing, and they just keep going because it was like, well, either you don't get it, or that's good information. Let me take from that criticism. Let me take what's good and let me apply it. They're very talented in that area. It's sort of like a gift that they have. It's part of their DNA. Maybe a gift from God. I don't know. That's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a clear message, consistently and passionately spoken, and then also solving a specific problem, and then handle the rejection, and that'll get you to $1 million.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, obviously there are other things which are unsaid, which is the solution has to have business traction. It needs to solve a real problem.
How much time did you spend like on these first early angel deals that you were involved in? Did you approach them as a passive investor, or would you say that you were always an active investor even in those angel deals?
I mean, I started off being a passive investor, but many of them reached out to me later on, and I spent time with them.
Okay.
Helping them out, but
were they all in your industry?
No, not at all.
Because your industry is retail.
Correct.
Right. So they weren't all in retail.
No, they were not.
Okay. So how does your network help them then?
I mean, network means different things. One is for customers. The other is for potential co-founders, technical resources, and so on and so forth. But almost everybody has an angle into retail as well. Right?
An angle into what?
Into retail.
Oh, really?
Yeah, retail.
I never felt like I did. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean there are obviously companies that don't, but
okay.
Look at CPG. I invested in companies that build things which athletes used, and then but it has a retail angle to it. So yeah, they all were very interested in hearing the retailer's perspective on it, and so that was very helpful to them.
I see.
Sure.
Okay. How did you make this? How did you make this transition from just being an angel, saying, I'm just going to be an angel and keep doing this myself, to then making the decision? I was surprised too, by the way. I got to tell you this. When you announced that Silicon Road, and I think you opened it on the floor up from ATDC or a couple of floors up from ATDC at Georgia Tech. But why, it was for me, I've been tempted, and you did it. And the temptation is I can have a little bit more muscle. Obviously, a lot more muscle if I'm investing other people's money. Plus, it gives me, I could make carry off of their money. So it winds up I reduce my risk and maybe, in effect, increase my upside return. It's a good balance. But what comes with that is you got to make the decision. I'm going to manage other people's money. I'm going to be a fund. How did you evaluate that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I started off wanting really to be a part of a larger initiative, not just by myself, but I would have happily been a large LP on another fund that was doing what I'm doing right now with Silicon Road. There is nothing like this, Charlie. I mean, so far, not found one anywhere in the world that does exactly what we are doing, focused on what we call commerce tech.
Okay.
And so I did, that was my goal.
So if you're saying if you would have found somebody focused on commerce tech with the vision that you had, you would have just joined them as a large LP.
I would have, yes.
Large investor, being available to them to help them out.
That's right.
But you didn't find that. But then you still have a big decision to make that says, I'm going to manage other people's money. I mean, you're a wealthy man. That's taking on a lot of responsibility.
That's
now
right.
You're reporting to a lot of people that kind of look like me. All right.
I could sound really smart and say, you know what?
So tell me then. So don't sound really smart. Just tell me what happened. What was your thinking at the time?
I started speaking with people, Charlie. It was the most amazing experience to me.
Okay.
I started speaking with people. I started speaking with people in the industry. Mm-hmm. And I've been so fortunate, so blessed to have great friends in the industry. And I started speaking with them. I said, guys, I know you have this problem, right? I mean, you need innovation. Retail historically has been a decade or more behind other industries in adopting innovation.
Wow, a decade. Okay.
A decade, yeah. I mean, there are large retailers who I won't name, but are still using green screens for doing what they do, and it's tragic in my opinion because they're missing out on huge opportunities. So I went and spoke with them and they all said, yes, I agree with you. And not only that, if you do something, I'll be an investor. So many of my early investors came to me and became investors with a similar motivation as me. I mean, one of them being profit, of course. They said, well, I mean, knowing my track record, they believed that I would be successful, but also they were wanting to just find innovation in retail. It was one of those things. And some of my investors, some of the big names in retail in the city, they became investors for that reason. So I mean, very blessed.
Once these people came to you or you're talking to them and they're saying, "Yeah, I could really use your help. So I'll invest with you. You do this." Now you've got it. Now it's like, oh my gosh. So now I have to do this, right? I have all these people. This is a real opportunity. How do you go to that next step? You don't know anything about pulling together a venture fund,
That's right. I sometimes feel I still don't know, but
but that didn't stop you when you got into retail. But go ahead.
That's right. No, it is a very interesting question, and again, it's one that when I walked into it, I felt I would figure it out. there's a lot to it. Like you said, there's a lot to it, and it's not just the knowledge; it's also the discipline, the process, the diligence, and these are all things. I had done a lot of M&A in my prior life. Did 14 acquisitions, and so I knew the diligence piece, I knew the valuation piece.
Yeah.
But there's so much more, and so I'll tell you what, I've been very fortunate in also getting a great team in place, a team which really, really understands this a lot more. I mean, my partners.
But do this when you say before we get into your team. I feel like you're going to skip past Fund 1 and you go to Fund 2. But I really want to talk about these early stages of Fund 1. The only other person that I watched go through this, by the way, was Blake Patton when he was doing Tech Square Ventures. I kind of watched how he pulled together, and it was a $10 million fund with not a variety of LPs, but really just like 3. That's how he started that fund. How did you kind of pull it out of the ground, and how big what was your target for the fund?
My target was 25 million when we started off. Okay. We made it 30 later on. But the thing is that we made it 30.
30, okay.
And we ended up at 31. So when I started this off, Charlie, my goal was really, again, I hope this doesn't sound too trivializing, but so I was happy to share the profits. Okay. And to me, at that point, the impact was more important than making money on a small fund. Okay. So I was going to share the profits. So in fact, I did try a couple of different people to come in and becoming managing directors of the fund initially. Okay. But they didn't work out for various reasons. And then
was part of the reason that you didn't know you didn't have a good profile or understanding because you didn't have experience on who to bring in?
That's right. That, and I couldn't attract the really smart people, right? Because I did not have a track record. Right. The big thing I realized is that people...
But you had enough of a track record to attract $31 million of industry funding.
Not at that point, right? It was early on. So I'm still thinking about it. I probably have about 10 lined up, say 10 and 15 lined up, but that's it. And then I went and spoke with people. But people, the funny thing is that many said that, I have seen others go through this process, but they eventually do not make any investments. So
really,
yeah, yes,
I never heard that before. Okay,
yes, they gave me examples of venture funds or supposed venture funds in the city where the one guy came to me and said, I work for this venture fund and I have a lot of experience in making investments. I said, how many? I said, in the past 2 years, he says, we have made 1 investment and we are closely looking at a second one right now. So, there are people that are not making investments. So I think that was a real fear that people had, the really successful VCs. And so to me, it was this, right? I was going to figure out a way to do it. I was very fortunate early on to get a great mentor in the form of Sid Mookerji. And I'm so glad. He liked me and liked what I was trying to do. And
did you say, was it Sig, you say?
Yeah, Sid Mookerji, yeah.
Sid Mookerji was you. Okay, good. So he came alongside of you.
He definitely was a mentor, still is a mentor. I think the world of him. He's such a great guy. And
you talk about a community developer, an investor. That's Sig, boy. He's been there for years. I met Sig back in 1992.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's right. And he was and always is so generous with his time.
Yeah.
When I meet somebody of Sig's stature, I'm always a little hesitant to ask for a lot of their time. Oh. But he was saying, okay, where do you want to meet? For how long do you want to meet? I'll be there. Such an amazing man, such an amazing man. So I learned a lot. And then, as we started making a couple of investments, then I had other people approach me and I started building my team. So it was that. Really, Charlie, I could tell you so many other stories, but the reality is that some of the credit only goes to me. It is my team, which has also made this fund really successful.
When you met with Sig in those early days, do you remember what were they, when you think about the questions that you were kind of stuck on and you needed answered, because you did have a lot of acquisition experience, as you said, and we'll get into that when we talk about SBI. But what happened, what questions were you asking Sig? Do you remember in those meetings?
Yes. I would ask him questions such as, hey, say, I have looked around and there is another fund, early stage fund, which is focused only on retail tech or e-commerce tech, CPG tech, right? Which is what I want to do. What are your thoughts on that? I asked him, if I went around and if I looked for investors, do you think that, they would be interested in something like this? How should I go about it? Should I think about it like a family office, which was a possibility for me?
Yeah.
Or should I think of this as a full-fledged fund? So that I would ask him questions on structure. I would ask him questions on how to, think about carried interest. The first few term sheets I asked him, I had him take a look at it and advise me on what is fair. I mean, to me, that was my problem because I didn't want to be too burdensome on the founders, which, they were desperate
So
for
you're
money.
saying term sheets with regard to, investments, your first few investments. I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I would ask him that, is this fair? And he would always have, he's so much wisdom. I mean, so he'd say, yeah, this is standard. This is not, you should ask for this. You should not ask for this, and so on. And even today, when we get stuck, even though I have a very accomplished team now, we still call Sid Mosley. We did that yesterday.
It is. It's comforting. It really is comforting it's like when you're an angel investor and you say, I'm going to be an angel investor, right? The first deal you see is the best deal you've ever seen,
That's right.
But when you see 30 deals, they come by, now you start to get a little bit of context and you start understanding and separating, right? You put people in buckets,
Absolutely.
right? This is no good. This is a possible, this guy's great, right? You could actually do that, but you've got to have you've got to have that experience. And he certainly has seen a lot of deals, and it gives you a lot of comfort to talk to somebody like that.
Very true. But he also is open-minded in the sense of, the terms that he used to sign his early day deals are very different, as you know, in terms of valuations, in terms of, the control provisions and so on and so forth. And he's an amazing guy in the sense that even with all this experience, he does not have any biases. He still is open to new ideas. He says, yes, that was what happened 5 years ago, but right now, a fair deal looks like this, and which is.
Yeah. What did you, as you look back on that time that you spent with Sig, what was the most valuable? What did you come away with, having had those conversations with him over a couple of years?
The biggest thing was confidence, Charlie. It was assurance, confidence, and a bunch of connections as well. I mean, he actually connected with me with a couple of people who eventually became some of my biggest investors. I mean, I had not met them. I mean, the most amazing stories I could tell you about some of these investors, Charlie, and very, very accomplished people. I did not meet them till they make the investment because it was all during COVID.
That's incredible.
Can you believe it? I mean, people writing checks just based on a conversation on Zoom. Okay, I won't do that with a startup. That's the irony of this. But
your reputation, I'll tell you, your reputation must have preceded you with these people, and to get the endorsement of a Sid Mosley, certainly he has so much credibility and is so high integrity and trusted.
Yeah.
If he says good guy, you should take a look at this very seriously. I'm going to look.
And that's my biggest profit out of this. People like Sig and like you and like Frank Tai and all the people, people at ATDC. I mean, that.
Well, who put them? So the money, that $31 million, didn't come from all industry players. It's not like Engage, for example, that's in the ATDC, which came from that whole host of, 20 Fortune 100 type companies or whatever they are. They came together and they actually funded that whole fund, if you will.
That's right.
You said you had people in the industry in e-commerce or in retail that said, "Hey, yeah, we do need innovation. We'll put money in." Are they the ones that put the whole 31 million in, or was it
no?
Also,
not at all. Not at all. I mean, there were people that I knew for many years, and this is one of the things that happens when you're an entrepreneur and you are about to have a great exit. Many of my friends, they said, "Darn it! I wish you had told me that you're doing this, and I would have made an investment." And next time, just make sure you tell me, okay? And, and not everybody means it, really. I found that out, but quite a few did. And so when I reached out to them, and these people were in real estate, I mean, and that means a lot to me. And that means a lot to me because, to your point, I'm taking other people's money,
Yeah.
right? And I look at
how did you come up with a number of 25 or 30 million? Why did that make sense? You must have had some formula on what the initial investments would be and what the follow-on would be and all that, right? But that's a small fund as things go these days.
Right. So yeah, I felt that I would need a team of, say, 3 people.
Okay.
Right? And so you do the math and say 2% of whatever number is got to kind of meet the needs of that. And I still don't take a salary, and I never did. But the others, I mean, I can't expect everybody to kind of work on passion and thin air, right? So
you kind of worked backwards into the number of people. No, you started with the number of people. You needed at least 3 people. Did that include you?
And that, I mean, I felt that probably another partner level person, and then maybe a couple of associates, principals, analysts, that kind of thing.
And then you just basically divide whatever their salaries are by 2%.
Roughly, yeah. Big, and then you
do what the fund size is. Okay.
Yeah, and then I mean, you have run companies too. You kind of say, okay, I think I probably will spend so much on legal, so much on marketing.
Yeah.
So travel, you kind of put those in and say, I mean, and we did cut it pretty close, but ended up in a good place. Yeah.
And how did that first fund? Do? Did you find how many investments did it make initially, and then how many follow-ons did it do?
So you talk about it in the past tense, but it's really not that much in the past tense.
How long ago was it that you started Fund 1?
2019. We did our final close almost exactly a year ago.
Oh my gosh, this is very much present tense. I'm sorry.
No worries. We have made investments into 16 startups.
16?
16.
In a year, basically. Well, a year, 2 years.
About 2 years, right?
Okay.
About 2 years.
Wow.
Our objective is to invest in between 30 and 40 companies. That's because of the approach that we have in 2 different ways. So one is that the intent was to get a string of pearls to specifically address innovation needs that retailers have. Okay. So we did and still continue to interview retailers and ask them, what areas do you have trouble with?
Yeah.
What are the areas that you'd like to see more in terms of innovation? And then we go and find startups. It doesn't always work exactly like that, but roughly we know the areas that are of interest. And then we go and find the startups.
Of the $30 million, well, tell me this. Of the $30 million that you had raised, $31 million that you raised, how much of that came from these retailers, which are sort of driving your investment thesis or what your interest should be?
Over half.
Over half. And so the other half are more the typical passive LPs, if you will. You're not really speaking to them.
That's right.
So it's 15 million is actually driving your market thesis, if you will. And how can you? I don't understand how you can get to 30 to 40 companies with a $30 million fund. That doesn't make sense to me. You were putting in, what were you putting in? $200,000 investments?
Yeah. So basically, our thesis is that we are going to start off with a small check. So we are going to write a $250,000 to $500,000 check.
Okay.
And then not everybody gets a follow-on. So we are going to put them in front of industry. We are going to see traction. We are going to observe the quality of the team. So in a way, we are doing it in reverse, but it's also kind of hedging a little bit in terms of where the successful ones will be. So when we see traction, we see agreement with what the industry is looking for. Then we write the bigger check. So that can be as much as $2 million. But we won't do that for every single one.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah.
Right.
They have to show that kind of traction. But the other side of this thing is when you have these smaller funds, which means you have less overhead, fewer people, right?
Yes.
If I said to you, okay, there's 3 people and you're gonna do 30 to 40 initial deals, if I was one of those 3 people, I'd say, Sid, I have a wife and I have kids. I don't
Mhm.
I don't have that much time, right? I mean, that could
Yeah,
wear you to the bone, right? If you just have a lot of opportunities like that. Did
there
that
is that.
actually? Well, you did 16 deals,
Yeah, yeah.
and you
And the
have.
one thing is,
Are you looking for another 14 to do 30?
we will do at least 14 more. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
So you must, when you put the money in that 250,000, let's say,
Yes.
do you sort of sort out the winners and losers fairly rapidly?
We can tell within a matter of a few months. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, here's the very interesting thing. Since we are so industry focused, our best deals actually are inbound.
Right.
Okay. So there are startups that approach us and say, well, we know that you have expertise in retail e-commerce, and we want your help. So we actually have, given how small we are and how new we are actually participating in deals which are, we're invited to, and which are Bay Area kind of deals. Okay.
Got
And
it.
so, which is very interesting. And so what that also means though is,
Are you
we don't,
invited to them via other VCs? Or are you finding that that the entrepreneurs themselves know about you?
it works both ways. So there is, some VCs invite us saying, we have this great payment company. Obviously, the biggest impact they can have is in retail, but they're not yet in retail. Help us out,
Okay.
right? So they are doing travel, they are doing healthcare, but not in retail. And so that's one. Or, I mean, there are some of our LPs bring deals because they are in the industry.
Okay.
And yeah, so a couple of our
Most of
great deals.
this e-commerce tech, is it mostly fintech? In other
No,
words, is it mostly around finance? Is that where the innovation is coming?
no, no. So we look at the world of retail innovation in 4 quadrants. One of them is fintech and
Okay.
payments. The second is supply chain and logistics.
What is it?
Supply chain,
Supply chain.
logistics.
Okay.
Yeah. So that includes things like what you would think about supply chain, your suppliers and the process of getting it to your warehouse, to your store, and also last mile delivery, of course. Right? So last mile for e-commerce.
Correct. I get that. Sure.
So
But that's all part of supply chain. Then you got the other 2 quadrants. What are they?
yeah, so one we call multi-channel commerce. So that thing includes things like what happens inside a store, sure, but also what happens, online or on a mobile phone, or now video commerce and voice commerce.
And what was that category called? You broke up a little.
Multi-channel commerce.
Market channel.
Multi-channel commerce.
Multi.
M-U-L-T-I.
M-A-R-T-I?
No, multi. M-U-L-T-I. I mean, not.
Oh, multi. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. It's not. It's. I think some of it is. You're breaking up just a little bit sometimes. I'm missing.
Okay, no
So
worries.
multi-channel commerce. Got it.
Multi-channel commerce.
And then
then
the
the
last
fourth
piece?
is in-store. That is the in-store piece. That's actually a pretty small portion of what we invest in, but there is a lot of opportunity there as well. Augmented reality, virtual reality kind of things.
Yeah, that's all just coming on board now. Yeah. What about
That's
the
right.
other? So if you take the other 3 areas, okay, which is fintech, supply chain, and multi-channel, okay, how do the investments break out from there? Are they even, or you find it heavily weighted to fintech, or how does that?
No. I think the majority of our investments are probably in multi-channel commerce.
Okay.
And then we have, fintech would be the second, probably, supply chain logistics, and then in-store. But also there are certain kinds of companies that have application across all these different areas.
Got it.
So, for instance, we have invested in a company that does sourcing and screening of gig workers or 1099 workers. Right. So you can have 1099 workers in a store.
Yeah.
They can have an impact on obviously supply chain logistics, which is probably the biggest area. They could be people that are supporting, multi-channel e-commerce in warehouses and so on and so forth. shop from a store, buy online, pick up from a store, those kinds of things. So that what we call our foundational focus areas. Okay. So those are the companies that could really have impact on any of these four quadrants.
And do you have companies in each one of these areas that has actually proven itself out, has that sort of second or third round type funding traction?
Interesting. Yeah. So we have four that we believe will become unicorns. We are fully convinced that they will become unicorns in the short term.
So they'll become billion-dollar value companies.
That's right. Yes.
Wow.
And out of which, I'd say
one of these $30 million funds would just die to just have one. You're telling me you have four. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, man, I mean, those companies are so darn good. I mean, it's everything, right? I mean, it's the business problem they are solving, the quality of the founder and the founding team.
Okay.
Right? And they're demonstrating traction. I mean, it's all those three things. It's beautiful.
So, but what are the odds that one VC, one man, he's going to be able to find those four deals? That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And all those four have been inbound.
All inbound. Based on your reputation.
Based on our reputation or based on exactly them approaching us, our LPs
or
bringing
reputation
them
or network, right? I mean, somebody in the network sent them to you. You said, you got to go to Sid. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Exactly. That's pretty exciting. So how do you then, so you see yourself, you've only been doing this for a couple of years with Fund 1, yet I'm aware, because we're going to have a meeting tomorrow, I'm aware that you actually have you're raising money for Fund 2 already. Mm-hmm. Yet you tell me you got 14 deals that you still want to do for Fund 1.
That's right.
Usually, I think you find yourself getting to the end of Fund 1, and then you start looking to Fund 2, showing all of these investments that have such promise in Fund 1. Yes. You're way ahead of the curve, it seems, in getting to Fund 2. What started that whole thing?
We felt we didn't have a choice, and that was it was this. So these four companies that I talked about, they have grown tremendously. Okay, so one of them, for example, has grown 1,500% in the past 18 months. Okay, and the guy is doubling his revenue pretty much every 3 months. And the thing is this, that when we invested in them, it was at a valuation which was within the scope of what we are all about, our fund size and our check size and so on and so forth. Uh-huh. And they quickly have gotten to a point where it doesn't make sense for us to invest in them with the $31 million fund. And, they won't come to us anyway. So
you're going to move from a startup fund. Fund 2 starts to become what I'll call a Series A level fund?
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yes. So
so Series A, so what kind of investments would you be making there? If 250 was your first investment for the Fund 1, get to Fund 2, and your first investment would be how much? How big a check?
$5 million.
$5 million. So how big is that fund?
75.
So that would give you only like 6 or 7 deals.
10 deals on an average, 8 to 12 deals, yes.
Well, you can't put $5 million. If you put $5 million in each one as a first time, then you'd exhaust the fund almost. You have to have that follow-on. So I'm thinking a 50-50. So 7-8 deals at $5 million, and then you got the rest for follow-on,
We have we are modeling 5+2 for each of these and take them through to Series C and then look for opportunities to exit. That's what we're looking for. So we expect
that. And it's still an all e-commerce tech, sticking with that. Have you changed your geography?
We always invested all over the U.S. And
you did? Okay.
Yes. So 50-50, 50% roughly Atlanta-based companies and 50% outside. Now, the thing is, Charlie, the unfortunate thing is this. 2 of the 4 companies that we love a lot are based in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And both sets of founders moved to Austin from other cities because they felt that Austin had great potential for a startup company like theirs. And I wish that we had gotten to them before and moved them to Atlanta instead. Yeah, I mean, I hope to do that. I hope to do that. I mean, I really, really hope that in the next 3 to 5 years, and we'll have, commerce tech startups starting in Atlanta because we are here.
Well,
And
that's a
there's
question that I had. You don't hear about commerce tech a lot. Okay, it's sort of an up and comer, I would guess, based on I'm not hearing about it. FinTech, on the other hand, you hear about it, right?
Yes.
Medical devices, and it seems like there's different areas in the country that are the perfect place for that. Like if you're looking at B2C type companies, it looks like Silicon Valley is the place. Social networks, those kind of things. Silicon Valley seems to be the center of that, and they understand it all. Where's commerce tech going to be? Is commerce tech based anywhere, or is there some city or some investing location where people go, yeah, if you're Comtech, that's where you need to go?
Mm-hmm.
Has that developed yet, or is it still showing itself?
Yeah, there isn't any, right? So we are the first, like I said. We have there are essentially aspects of what we are trying to do which have got traction elsewhere. So fintech, for example, of course. But the other one thing I want to make sure that is very clear that Atlanta is not by any means a small player in retail. You have some of the largest retailers, Home Depot, CPG companies, Coke, shipping companies, UPS. I mean, there is a lot more behind that list of three names. So there are many great companies already in the city. Now, well, the startup ecosystem in general in Atlanta has lagged a little bit, and we all know that. And so the opportunity definitely is there for this city to become that hub, right? And so obviously, if one venture fund by itself will not do it all, so there are so many other initiatives that have to be undertaken for that to be successful.
What's your vision for what's your vision in 10 years on what e-commerce tech can be in Atlanta?
There are all these startup support ecosystems such as ATDC, the Creative Destruction Labs.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them that we have.
And that's at Georgia Tech, right? Okay.
That's at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Both of those. Also, our foundation has made a gift to Kennesaw State.
Okay.
It's called the Mookerji Innovation Fund, and it's a small gift, making small grants to founders that are current students of KSU.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that. There have to be accelerators, there have to be incubators focused on retail tech, commerce tech. So there is this community built, which will support each other. And all of those things have to happen. I mean,
well, that has to happen by having some of these investments that you're talking about. If these investment, how many are in Atlanta of these unicorns that you were talking, the 4 unicorns that you potentially?
Unfortunately, none.
None. Okay.
None.
So that weighs against you. And that you would benefit from them financially, okay? So you can invest more in e-commerce tech here in Atlanta, but you don't have all of those people coming out of e-commerce tech in those 4 companies living in Atlanta, which is something that does weigh against you a little bit.
So far.
And
the hope, expectation is that we'll have people move to Atlanta.
That's the way to do it. So when do you how far? What's your progress? I'm going to drop this fund thing now. So what's your progress on Fund 2? You're talking $75 million. You made Fund 1 sound like you made 2 phone calls and you got $31 million. Okay. So what does Fund 2 look like? Okay.
Yeah, it's $75 million. We have commitments of 25 out of that. Okay. So we have a third of it raised. I mean, literally in 2.5 months. We actually just scrambled to get the docs together, and we did the first close at the end of January. And we have line of sight to 25 more right now. So we believe that we'll be done with this fund by the fall of 2022. And then
completely closed, 75 million committed.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
We have already written checks for 2 companies from what we have raised so far.
Are they your portfolio companies or new companies?
Portfolio companies.
Portfolio companies from Fund 1.
From Fund 1. The other thing, Charlie, just it's kind of interesting. I love your perspective as well on this. Because we expect 80% of the investments. So if we invest in 10 companies, 8 of the 10 in our opportunity fund are going to be from our seed fund, right? So we already know the founders. So we are not taking.
Assuming that you could be objective, that means that this is a much lower risk fund than what others. It means it should have pretty good return. It should have very good returns.
Yes, that and no, not just that. Also, our costs are going to be lower. So, in fact, what we expect to do in this fund is to only charge the 1% management fee, not the 2%.
Okay.
Yeah,
will the carry be the same though? Is the carry still a?
Yes, carry will be
20%.
That's right.
Okay.
But we believe that we don't need the additional 1% to run the fund, right? Because we already have 8 out of the 10 potentially coming from our seed fund.
How much when you put these funds together? How much of your family wealth do you have to commit to the funds to? I don't take any salary out of them. So, but people are probably saying so as the managing partner. How much money are you committing to these things?
I have committed. I'm the largest investor in both funds, and I will be the largest investors in both funds. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, when I tell my friends to put money in, I need to make sure that I put my money where my mouth is, and I will do it. Absolutely.
Well, there's not a lot of fund managers or first-time fund managers that come together that actually have the funds that you have to commit. So that's why I asked the question. You have the funds to commit. Some people wouldn't put the funds in. They say, look, I'm putting all my time into this. That's worth more than my money. You can make a case for that. So that's why I'm only putting $1 million into this fund, But it sounds like you're putting in quite a bit more than that.
So, I mean, I would rather have control on my destiny. That's part of it.
Yeah,
we all entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we're saying, why should I let a third-party wealth manager, make decisions on my behalf when I know how to do this thing, right? So, so it's part of it is that. I mean, so that's to me, it is a personal investment as much as a lot of the other things that we talked about.
Well, given that you look like you're going to be very successful with these funds, with that, let's assume that actually happens. Okay. You've had a good, I don't know how much it was that you cashed out when you sold to that private equity firm. And I do want to get to that, but when you look out 10 years, that number is going to be a small number compared to what your net worth could potentially be given these funds and these investments, right? Do you have a vision for that money?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have a very well-funded foundation.
And what's it focused on?
It's focused right now on entrepreneurship in the US, which is why the foundation is the one which had made gifts to Georgia Tech and to KSU.
I see. Okay.
We also do a lot of work with women and children in India. So one of the blessings in my life is my wife. She's been a bedrock of support. I mean, she's amazing. I'm jumping in wherever I need help. Business, I mean, and never ever saying, you really want to do this. Well, she does say now that you said you're going to be retired. What happened? But other than that, right? But she's been amazing. What did she
say? You were going to retire?
That's what we thought about, right? We talked about us kind of spending lesser time doing work and maybe more traveling, etc. after the exit from SPI. But that has not really, really panned out. But
because of you or because of her?
We are both very passionate about what we do. It's plain and simple. That's what it is.
So you're excited about what you see you could be doing, which keeps you in the game. The impact that you can have on people's lives.
That's right.
How did you choose those people? And what did you say they were? What kind of people are you supporting in India?
So we support an organization which takes care of sexually abused women.
Okay.
And girls. We support orphanages. We support schools.
Do you support them directly?
Yes. Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Yeah. We support them.
So you know the people that are the founders or the people that are running those organizations?
Yes. So my wife, Sophie, she is on the board of some of these organizations. And we take care of all the expenses typically of these organizations. So and it's very rewarding. The mighty US dollar goes a long way in India.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think that's wonderful. Are these organizations, are they in the same area of India that you grew up in?
Yes, right now, that's the way it is.
That's
So we don't have a lot of structure right now, Charlie. Again, this is like venture to me. We are learning as we go along.
I'm asking this, but I ask this because I find that people that have windfalls like you do, we go from the people that are least equipped to give money away, to be philanthropists. The least equipped of them are the ones that were very equipped to make the money.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know how to make money. Now you say, oh, I've got this pile and I want to be able to help people. I want to give money. What do I do now? I mean, I never even thought about it, right? I was so busy trying to make it over here and to build this company. And my company was eating every dollar that we made because we wanted to grow it big. Yes. And then someone said, here's a check, go away. And you say, well, Sophie, if you and me travel, we could travel the whole world in a year and we've spent nothing, okay, compared to what we made. Now we need to give money away. And you look at each other and you say, but where, right? It's hard. It's very hard to do.
It's very hard. It's very hard. Yeah. So, a couple of other things, if I may. So I'm very fortunate also with our kids. Our son, Shawnish, works with me on the fund, as you probably know.
Yeah. I met him that one time at Angel Lounge. Yeah. What's his name?
Shawnish.
Shawnish. Okay.
Right. And Shawnish is a Georgia Tech grad. He could be doing anything he wanted right now. And he worked at Intel for 2 years. He said, Intel gave me a job when nobody else would give me a job. So I have to give them 2 years of service. So he did 2 years there. And then
he was mechanical engineer, if I remember right, wasn't he?
Computer engineering.
Computer engineer. Okay.
That's right. And so he did that. And then he always wanted to be a part of what I'm doing. So I'm so blessed to have him here. But also our daughter, she's the exact opposite. So here we are, venture capitalists. She said, no, you know what? I want to help kids. And so she went and did her master's in social work. And she's working with disadvantaged kids.
What's her name?
Now. Sheena.
Sheena, okay.
Yeah. And Sheena is, she blows my mind when I go and see the schools that she goes to. I mean, I'm probably too coddled. I won't even walk on those streets. I'd be afraid to walk on those streets. And she goes there. And those kids love her. And here is exactly where I think we can make a big impact with our foundation. When she is fully equipped. I mean, she is still getting her licensure. Once she gets her license, I'm just looking forward to helping her out and build out something that we'll all be very proud of.
It sounds like she'll play a big role too going forward in the philanthropy as your family wealth grows.
I told her, the only thing I'll tell you, since I'm an entrepreneur, is don't work for anybody else.
And she's a social worker. Go ahead, figure that one out. That's a hard one, to not work for somebody else.
I said, build your own organization, right? I mean, because she does help kids. I said, yeah, do the counseling, but do it yourself. And, we'll have a big portion of it kind of funded. So for disadvantaged kids. So she said, but Dad, I don't want to do payroll. That was her only thing. I said, is that your only objection here? I don't want to do payroll.
Well, you didn't want to do payroll either. That's why you had Sophie, right?
Yeah, actually, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
That. Oh, that is so great. So what is it? So when you tell her, finish that conversation, I interrupted you. So she doesn't want to do payroll. So what do you tell her?
I said, you know what? I mean, if that's your only objection, we can work around that. No worries. But,
Well, what would somebody in social work, what would they do if they weren't working for, some sort of government organization? That seems to be where all social workers go. How can they work independently,
Yeah. So she works, her specialization is something called play therapy. So these are kids that have some kind of trauma in their past or some other kind of challenges that they have faced in life, because of which they have lots of repressed memories or repressed thoughts and fears, and therefore they cannot function properly. So she puts them in an environment with certain items and like sand. There's a big sandbox. There's water.
Oh, is this her business?
No, that's what she's been trained in. Okay.
But she's still working for somebody else now.
She's right now working for somebody else. And what I was going to tell you is that she's working for another company, and these guys, they essentially loan out therapists like her.
I see. Okay.
That go to schools, in this case, inner city schools, and help out kids that need the help.
So they contract with states then probably.
That specific organization does. Yeah. There are other similar counseling groups that do it, for everybody. I mean, people have need for counseling as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
how about, take me to this. Tell me about, where did you grow up?
Oh, this is a joke I always make. From my southern accent, can't you tell, right?
Well, I know you grew up in India, but I don't know where in India, and I don't know what. I know that there's the different classes in India and all that. I don't know where what your background is.
Yeah, no, sure.
Because you've come a long way,
right.
from where you were.
I'm very, very thankful of having this opportunity to be here. I mean, I grew up in India. My dad was a food scientist.
Okay.
He used to work for the government of India. Told me all his life while he was working that, son, work for the government. They'll give you a pension for life. I'm glad I didn't listen to him. He's glad I didn't.
Did you have other brothers and sisters, or were you the only child, or how did that work?
I have an older brother.
An older brother. Okay, so you're the baby. Okay.
I'm the baby, yeah. And so but when I started my company and I had an office in India, my father, he at that point had retired from his scientist job, and he helped me run the company as well.
You started the company in India?
I did, yeah. I did have a company in India, and my dad ran it for 7 or 8 years.
What kind of company was that? And how old were you when you started that?
I started it as part of my organization. My organization provided tech services to retail and e-commerce companies, and also had products for that industry. And I founded this company in the US in 1994. So I was 27 years old. And I then...
Well, in 1994, there wasn't any e-commerce. There wasn't any internet.
Yeah. It was only retail at the time.
Retail design? Is that what it was?
No. So Macy's was a big customer. Genuine Parts was a big customer. So they had stores, and they had technology inside the stores.
Right.
And we helped write that.
But that was wasn't that mostly, who was the biggest in the technology in the stores? Was it, you're talking about point of sale type terminals and those kind of things?
That is one aspect of it. There's also systems around warehouse management, systems for supply chain, logistics, marketing. So there are all these. Yeah, there was no internet.
Are you competing against guys like NCR and some of these other bigger organizations?
Yeah, I was competing in not NCR, but lots of big organizations like IBM Global Services.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, they were everywhere. They still are.
So retail was a big one a big market for IBM Global Services.
Yeah, for most of these companies, it is their third largest industry vertical after fintech and healthcare.
Okay.
Financial services.
How did you? Well, you already met. When did you meet Sophie?
I met her in Madison, Wisconsin.
Of course, that's where everybody meets Sophie. Okay.
I met her. So I came to the US initially on a work visa.
Okay.
And I was, believe it or not, I knew more about welfare systems for the state of Wisconsin, because we rewrote the welfare system for the state of Wisconsin. And Sophie and I were working on the same project.
Who were you working for?
Deloitte.
Oh, did you go to college here?
No. I just came from India and I started working for them.
Did you go to the, what's the name of the university that the tech people come out of, the high-end university?
It is, yeah. I went to a really good school in India. It's called the Birla Institute of Technology and Science, or BITS Pilani.
Okay. And
I went there, and then, I worked in India for a couple of years, and then, I got this opportunity. I came and...
Yeah, but you told me you started your company in India.
No, I started my company in the US in 1994.
Okay.
Right. And I started off my India operations in 1997. So 97, there was already the internet, right? So we were connecting.
Yeah, now now you had the internet. Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We had Netscape.
That's right. I mean, the only thing is that the only regret I have is that the other company we started in 1997 was Google, and they got a little bit bigger than me. What can I say?
Well, so you're telling me that you succeeded, but it was almost like a failure compared to Google, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No regrets, Charlie. But no, I'm just kidding. But it has been an amazing time. It has been.
So you met Sophie. So she has a technical background too. Was she working for Deloitte?
She was too. Yes.
So she was a technology consultant for Deloitte also.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. And so you met her up in Madison working on the social welfare system.
We wrote the food stamp system for the state of Wisconsin.
Okay. Were you working in Madison?
Madison.
Oh, you were in Madison, Wisconsin.
And
you were 25 years old?
I was at the time 25 years old, yeah.
Right.
24 years
old. So where did SPI come from?
Meaning?
Like, where did the idea come from? What was the genesis of SPI? I mean, I'm working on welfare systems and writing food stamp programs. I mean, so I'm trying to make the leap here.
Yeah. No, so I mean, I was a pretty, technology-wise, I was quite good. And I saw an opportunity to do a couple of things. One is many of my friends, they were looking for, they were really, really good, but they didn't have good technology opportunities. So I wanted to create something which will give them that environment to work in. And also, at the time, this whole thing with doing things across two continents between US and India was taking off and being done not very well. And so I just wanted to also, at the time, I had lived in India all my life, most of my life.
Right.
I wanted to try to help that country as well. So I thought I'll help by building this kind of a thing. And so launched the company in 94. And 94, very frankly,
that was the outsourced arm, if you will.
Correct.
Technology outsourcing is what was in India.
Yeah, we had technology outsourcing locations in India, Nepal, and Romania.
Wow.
So we had 1,000 people across all locations, about 500 in the US and Canada as well.
That plus the 1,000 that you talked about, or 1,000 in total?
Total of 3,000.
3,000.
3,000, out of which 500 were in the US. Yeah.
How did you get your, when you started this company, how did you focus on retail? Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I see what you did. I like what you're saying is that you had a lot of friends that you were working with that they were basically underutilized. Okay.
That's right.
Right. And so I have an opportunity. I have all these rich techs, if you will, really intelligent people who are very gifted and are hard workers. And I have all these people in India. So how can I pull all this together? Now it's a matter of I got a billion army. Who do I focus it on? Right.
That's right.
How did you come to that?
Yeah, that just happened. It so happened that I was also did some consulting work for Macy's. And Macy's said, hey, what about this? Would you like to help me out on these projects? And that's how we started off. And once we were down that path, then we began to focus exclusively on retail and e-commerce.
So Macy's was the cornerstone?
For sure.
Yeah, they were the ones that got you started. And
That's
so
right.
once so you just stayed. You must have had other opportunities in other vertical markets. Why did you stay and become a specialist in retail? Because early on in any of these companies, there's always, you know how to code, or you know the internet, or right, it could be anybody. And then you wind up being everything to everybody. And then you're nobody, right?
Yeah.
So how did you how did you have the discipline to stay in retail?
Actually, it's very interesting that I definitely underinvested in marketing, like all entrepreneurs probably do, I think. To us, as entrepreneurs, we believe that marketing is the biggest waste of our dollars. There is no direct return on investment.
Are you talking about marketing, or are you talking about sales?
marketing.
Just marketing. Okay, good.
Just marketing, right? I mean,
So brand awareness, lead generation, those kind of things. Okay.
Exactly. So, so what happens is that if you're not well known, you're not invited to the table, right? And the thing is that because I was already doing work for the likes of Macy's and Genuine Parts and Ahold, I started getting invited to other retailers. So Belk department stores, Bell's department stores, later on companies like Groupon, so they started calling us because we already had that reputation. So, it just kind of morphed into that. And as I started
that's the beauty of vertical marketing. I mean, verticals are all, no matter how big they are, they're also the smallest things you can be involved in. Everybody knows everybody kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So you started getting all that referral work, which is the best marketing that there is. That's
right. And the other thing also was, you laughed when I said IBM Global Services being a competitor.
Yeah.
That was real, and so we'll never win an RFP against it, IBM Global Services. It's very, very difficult, at least. And so we would get invited, but the only reason why we would win is because we specialized in only retail.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right? So that was very.
When you
very
walked in, and when the vice president for IBM Global Services walked in to give their presentations, you knew as much as he did or more.
Yeah,
about the retailer's business.
That, and I would be able to tell the retailer that, if I have an extra dollar to spend, I'm going to spend it on creating more knowledge in retail. IBM cannot say that.
So how about you being an immigrant and being an Indian here, okay, with most of your staff, if not all of your staff, is Indian, okay, and you're competing against sort of these American companies. Did you find early on, you're talking in 1994, in those years, did you find that there was discrimination? Did you run into that?
No. I met some really, really upstanding people here.
Okay.
So one of the things I did was that, knowing my limitations, I didn't understand the culture very well at the time. And so, yeah, so I
what were you missing?
Well, I mean, I didn't know.
You say you didn't understand the culture. What did that look like? I mean, so at some point it cost you something by not understanding it. I'm just wondering, what did you not understand that you now understand? You follow me? I
mean, the nuances of college football.
The what?
The nuances of college football, NCAA football. Right? It's true. I mean,
what does that have to do with anything?
Oh, it's got a lot to do with everything, because buying, as you know, is a decision which is based on emotion, usually not on logic. And people like to buy from people like themselves. So I mean, so I went and hired a very diverse team. I was not surrounded entirely by Indian people, right? I mean, I was on purpose going and finding people that understood what I was doing and willing to come and be a part of what I was trying to build. And I learned a lot of lessons from that. One of them being, the whole selfish thing about being able to connect better, but also I started making better decisions, right? Because one of the things we do is when you have a cultural upbringing of a kind, right? We tend to think in a particular manner, maybe be more conservative. I mean, in India, people are probably more conservative.
Yeah.
They don't like to make bold decisions. And I had execs that would recommend things which I would think were totally outlandish. But then I realized they were right. I should be making some of these decisions. And so not bet the farm on anything, but definitely take chances, right? And so that really, really paid off for me. It really did.
But how did it work? How did it work then to, as you're building this company, Sophie was working in the company.
That's right.
Did it become, how did it not become or maybe it did become a family business? You grew if it's a family business, you grew it like the Waltons did. Okay. So, I mean, so what were the challenges with, and are those challenges cultural? You follow me?
Well, so there were challenges, but those challenges were not because Sophie was involved here and my dad was running the company in India. Okay.
Okay.
I would say that the challenges were because I did not understand how to share wealth with employees and get them motivated as partial owners of a company rather than, and it after a while I did, and then I made changes, and that was transformational. But that was what maybe.
So you went through a period where you were almost the employees saw this as a family company in effect.
Oh yeah.
And then you had to then, so the answer to that was to distribute some equity, to start having other people share in the pie, if you will?
That's right. I did that. And I brought in really high profile execs to work with me. And they obviously wouldn't come in without, real both cash compensation as well as, stock options and things like that.
Did they all come from IBM Global Services, or what did you do? Sometimes the guys that are beating you in deals are the best guys to hire,
Yeah. No, I mean, I had a lot of, again, I was very fortunate. I brought in a person. He said, I can't work for you, Sid. His name was John Cook. So John was, do you know John? I'm not sure.
I know that name.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So John was the founder, chairman, CEO of a company in town called PRGX. Okay. And amazing man. I mean, he taught me so many lessons, Charlie, including on generosity. I mean, he used to give away a lot of his money to causes in Nepal and Thailand and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, but this man, I mean, so he came on board and he was a great mentor. But he said, I cannot work for you. Said, I was chairman, CEO of PRGX. So I said, okay, fine. How can I involve you? So he said, I'll be chairman of your board. I said, okay, he came to work every day. And he said, I don't need cash compensation. We don't need to give any more money to Uncle Sam. But I definitely want some benefit at the back end of this. So he created a plan for him to benefit on the back end of it. And he did very well, when we had the exit. I also brought in a CFO who was the head of M&A at UPS. And he brought in... He did a lot of the M&A for me as well. And, I basically put together a team that was diverse. I mean, different races, different genders. I insisted on that because, in fact, the funny thing is, you're right. Actually, I saw a lot of my friends who ran companies like mine, and they were surrounded by people who are also Indian, that kind of a thing.
Right.
And
yeah.
I, on purpose, built this team of, a Caucasian CFO. I had an African-American lady who was my legal counsel and so on and so forth. But the funny thing is I had to fight with them because they wanted to hire people just like themselves. I said, no, you can't do that. Why don't you look at this, these options? And they
How
eventually...
old were you when you were doing all this building? It sounds like you were sort of in your early 30s by then.
That's right.
And you were thinking diversity before anybody else I know was thinking diversity.
Yeah, I guess. But it was, to me, it was smart business too. I think that diversity is smart business. I really believe so.
When did you believe that? What was the catalyst that had you believing that?
I just said, right? My head of infrastructure was an African-American gentleman, and he came and said, Sid, think about partnerships with, who, IBM. And I said, are you kidding me? I compete with them. But he said, no, you got to look at it because they have a team of probably 500 people that's just focused on partnerships. Okay, and they allocate a bunch of money for it, and you will benefit a lot. I said, well, that's a different way to look at it. So, yeah. I would never have done that, right? Because
so what does the partnership have to do with the diversity? Corporate partnership like that?
Because the way I thought was an enemy is an enemy, right? And he was able to...
I see, okay.
Right, and he's saying, so, there are parts of it that you're right, we'll never collaborate with, but you got to look at the portions that you can get benefit from. And I'm not saying, it was just something that he brought to the table and a different way of thinking on that. He was a very collaborative guy. And then my CFO was, he was very aggressive. With deal making. He taught me a lot about deal making. Right? And
when did you get? So you were growing organically for a good while.
Yes.
And then did your continued quick growth organically end at some point, and then you started thinking about growing through acquisition?
No, actually, most of my growth was organic. I did my acquisitions, the majority of them. At the end, we did a couple to really bulk things up before we sold it. But before that, all my acquisitions were either to acquire a new capability or to grow into a new geography. So, for instance, we ended up with about 6 different products, and 4 out of the 6 were actually acquisitions. We grew into Australia through an acquisition. So eventually, we did a couple of large acquisitions, which helped us, increase in size before we did the sale to Cognizant.
So you did. So your growth through acquisition had 3 prongs to it. Then the first being new capabilities. Second was new geographies, and then later, towards the end, it was just get bigger.
That's right.
Right, just to add revenue and people. Was it? Were you a software company, or were you predominantly a services company?
Predominantly a services company. 70-30, 70% services, 30% product.
When you sell a company like that, what kind of what was the multiple that those sold for? At that time, the public companies, what were they selling for that were predominantly services companies?
About anywhere between 6 and 10 times EBITDA.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
There must have been some pretty good gross margins on those deals.
Good gross margins, and we were growing. We were growing at 20-25% every year. So I could demonstrate that for the past 7, 8, 10 years. So that was a good story, right? So they did it. And then and the PE company that made the initial investment, they tripled their money in 3 years.
That's pretty good. How do you maintain 25% growth when you got 3,000 people?
Oh,
in the services business within a vertical market? Usually they flatten out over time. Okay.
No, so we did various things, right? So we first of all, we ended up at 3,000 people, so it grew to that number. So we did, as we acquired product companies, we would use the product to be like the tip of the spear, and once you go in there, you sell other products to them or sell services to them, because they all have those needs and they're looking for the right partner. As we grew into geographies, that was what we used again, right, as techniques to go and talk to them about, hey, what about these other capabilities, and what about figuring out how to do things more efficiently, and et cetera, et cetera. So there was that. Partnerships helps as well. If you have the right kinds of partners, they bring you some deals.
Yeah, a lot of times partnerships sound good, but they never produce anything, because the two partners both want the other partner to bring revenue, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
But how did you make those work?
Yeah, with services, that's definitely true. With products, it's a little different, right? Because with products, you can say, as long as there are meaningful adjacencies and no competition, then it makes sense to kind of say, what about using this product along with the services that we are providing, right? And we can support you in that manner. So definitely, it's about how you go about and what kind of partnership you have. And then there are certain product companies that don't do services very well. They just don't have the capability. So the whole, as you know, right, a company that is a services company primarily, like we were, we didn't do a good job with building products. We did not, because our mentality, we would be tracking EBITDA. Well, if you have a product company, you cannot measure EBITDA, right? You got to figure revenue growth, and that's more important than anything else, complete the product. So there was that challenge. And And so basically, we would work with product companies and help them with their services because they were unable to sell their products because the services associated with those sales, they were unable to perform. They were unable to build a services company. Yeah.
How did you avoid as a successful services business? How did you avoid not falling into the trap saying, Sophie, we're doing pretty good. We're making pretty good money. Let's just keep riding it out. Let's just have income. I mean, there seems to be, you had quite an appetite for growth. You don't grow by accident. You grow intentionally. Okay. How did you have that? Where did that come from? Where did you, was it Sophie pushing you along or, or was it you, or was it your team? I don't know.
No, I mean, it's basically the same reason why I then started the venture fund. Didn't have to do it. I mean,
you just have to do it.
I mean, I did not have to do the venture fund, right?
No,
and I did not have to grow. No. You're right. And so actually, when my CFO joined me, and I remember we had an office in Singapore and we were sitting in a restaurant and having a drink. And he said, I want to tell you, I've looked at your company. Now I've been here for 6 months and you have an option we have not talked about, which is that for the next several years, you can take home, a 7-figure check and you don't need to do anything else.
Right.
That's one option. The other option is that we'll work together and we'll, make some additional acquisitions. We'll grow the profile of the company, grow the revenues, and then have an exit. Which one? So to me,
so those were the two options. That's what I'm saying. So a lot of people fall victim to the first option. They go, so I'll make a couple of 3, 4, whatever the number, millions per year. How much does a man need? Okay, I'm good. Yeah. But there's this other piece that what I'm seeing in you and Sophie is we do it because we see there's an opportunity and a need to do it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, to me, the number is not 3 or 4 million. And to me, it's a much smaller number. And beyond that, I mean, money is sitting in the bank. I mean, what do you do with it anyway? Right? So, but to me, the challenge is greater. Very frankly, the challenge is greater. I mean, one of the most interesting things, Charlie, is, this phase of my life right now where, I've been working with ATDC. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and asked, Sid, why are you doing this? What's your motive? So why do I have to have a motive? I mean, it's...
Everybody has a motivation. They might not have, based on their values, the person who's asking you that question, they might not appreciate your motivation because theirs is different, right? But everybody does seek to understand. I like to understand. Like when I'm talking to an entrepreneur, for example, in a startup, I want to know what's motivating the person. And if the person says, well, I just want to make a lot of money, I'm like, not interested in that. Okay. Because it's not going to keep you in the game. That motivation has to be pure for you to fight through all those brick walls you're going to have to go through, right? Yeah. It's like, I can't not do this. I have to do this. I'm called to this. And you and Sophie seem to be built that same way.
Yeah. I mean, for us, we want to make an impact. We want to make an impact. There is a lot of people less fortunate than us, and we want to figure out what's the best way to impact that part of society and people around us. So that's what drove us then. So our foundation is not new. I mean, of course, it got a healthy dose of funding after our exit, but even earlier, we did a lot of stuff, and it was because we wanted to make a difference. And a lot of the credit goes to Sophie, by the way, for that. Okay, so I just want to make sure that she gets it because she's the one who has been so very thoughtful in how she, we need to make an impact on the less fortunate, and that's what we have been.
Well, she sounds like your marriage sounds wonderful. You and her are a perfect partnership. Really, it's just amazing how fortunate you are to be with each other. That is so wonderful. I'm sure your kids are going to have trouble finding somebody who's was it Sheena?
Yeah, Sheena, that's right.
Sheena and Shanish is the other one?
Shawnish, yeah.
Shawnish, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be looking for their spouses, and it's going to be interesting to see if, because you've held up a pretty impressive model between you and Sophie, and our kids are always looking to match that in some way, right? I mean, that's just part of our subconscious. That's the way it runs. So good for you.
Thank
So
you.
what one of the questions that comes up for entrepreneurs very often is, particularly after they got their business running, like you did yours, they're getting calls multiple times a week from private equity firms, okay, that are saying, "Oh, we could just we'll cash some of you out. It'll be good for you. You could take some of the risk off the table. Just let us in." You were getting those calls because I get this question to me all the time: should I take those calls? Should I pay attention to those people? How did that go for you? Because you were getting them for a very long time.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, so one is that I don't think that there were as many calls those days, right? I mean, this was talking about.
No, not as many. I'll give you that. Okay. But
Yeah,
they had to increase with intensity over time.
Yeah, I know. The other is that, there's a saying in Hindi that means that a monkey doesn't know the taste of ginger. Even though ginger is a very good spice, monkeys will never eat ginger because they don't. So that was me and
Give me that one again. Monkeys don't know
the taste of ginger.
I love that. Okay.
Right? So therefore, they'll never ever eat that, right? So because it's a beautiful spice. So, I mean, to me, those calls when I got them earlier on, it was like these extended warranty calls that we get these days. I would kind of listen to them with half a year maybe, and then hang up. That's what I did, seriously. And I didn't know how to respond to those. It's only later on that once I understood what could be achieved, I started kind of channeling them in the right way and looking for opportunities. But usually, everyone that calls you is looking for a deal.
Yeah, but it seems to me what you did, so that you're answering the question here, and that is those early calls that you got, or at some point you're getting these calls, and like you said, I'm the monkey that doesn't know the taste of ginger, right? Well, you didn't really have a need for ginger, if you will. In other words, it wasn't clear to you. You were building, the company was growing, everything was fine. When you started seeing, we can grow maybe through that CFO saying we can grow through acquisition, that's going to take cash, more cash than you have, and there'll be other people. Now that we have a high valuation, maybe we can sell some of our company and wind up with that cash to get to even higher multiples of valuation. So now you had a need. Is that when it started to make sense to start talking to these people in earnest?
No, education. I mean, seriously, the first time somebody told me that, have you thought about an exit? I said, yeah, and my door has an exit sign there. What do you mean? I didn't know. I didn't know that term. I mean, I seriously.
How old were you when someone asked you that question?
Probably, late 20s, early 30s. But still, okay. I mean, you had a company, right? And they said, what's your exit plan? I said, what do you mean by that? I don't know. Right? And so definitely, I'm not going to pretend that I knew all these things, early on in my business. But I had great mentors, and they taught me everything I know. And they were the ones that said, well, here are your options, right? So, you can have a great event for your family. And to me, that by itself was not good enough. But then they helped me actually see, including John Cook, said, here is how you can actually make an impact on the world, right? You can make an impact. I mean, you can get like you said, a few million here and there, but that's not going to be as meaningful as if you aim for a really big event and then use that to make a much bigger impact, where you don't have to worry ever for how you're going to live.
How old were you when that information came to you and made sense?
Maybe my mid-30s, Charlie, something like that.
Oh, okay. And by then the company had how many employees? So that's a 8-year-old company at that point.
8-year-old, probably north of 100.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So still a moderately sized company, not all that big.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember
So you were sitting there probably at maybe 10 to 17 million, something, and 12 to 17 million, probably something like that. 100 people.
something like that. Something like that. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I remember when I went past 10. So I went when I just looked back at my essay I did my executive MBA at Goizueta. And in that essay, which was in 2002, I wrote that we had 120 employees. And by the way, that was another great thing I did. It really helped me get
the executive MBA.
That's right.
And where was that?
At Emory, Goizueta.
At Emory, okay.
Yeah. So that was definitely quite transformational for me, very personally. I went there thinking, you know what, I'm going to meet some people, and some of my classmates could become my customers. But instead, I learned different ways to look at my business. I learned, I made some relationships, didn't necessarily always result in customers, but I made some connections for life. But I mean, in general, I started looking at life and business very differently. I'm a different person because of that MBA. For sure.
What's very interesting is how many people go for executive MBAs that are in corporations. Okay, here you were now 5-6 years in business, your business, and now you're going to executive MBA. Everything you learn, you could apply immediately.
Yeah.
It all made sense. In fact, it made what you were doing make sense. Right? That's really valuable.
I would sit there in the class and say, yeah, here is how I can make it apply. And then I would call a meeting. At the time, I probably had, 30 people, 40 people in the US. And I would call them all and say, guys, guess what? I mean, I'd buy them a drink and I'd say, I've got a great idea. And one of them would stand up and say, you just finished the class, didn't you?
Stop reading books. Stop going to school. You're killing us, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, it was
so cool.
It's amazing.
So how many years were you into business before you accepted an offer from private equity?
From 94 till 2015.
To 15.
So, 15.
Well, you were doing these acquisitions out of earnings.
Cash flow. Yep.
Wow. How big was the biggest acquisition you made out of just cash flow?
Between 10 and 15 million.
Was it always cash that you bought with, or did you buy with some of your stock?
I usually bought with cash, and that was a mistake. Meaning, I wish that I had done more stock than cash. But yes.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I didn't realize that if you pay out a founder completely, which I prefer to do actually, they don't have any incentive to make your business successful anymore.
Right.
They might be good people, well-meaning, but
they're not motivated like you and Sophie.
They're not. Yeah, they're not motivated to make the business successful. Yeah. But they are definitely, they still have an attachment to their business. So it's the worst possible combination, right? Because, there's, oh no, before the acquisition, everything is, oh yeah, whatever you say. But once the money...
After the acquisition, it's, you don't understand our business. That's not how we do it, right?
Exactly. Oh, your sales guys can't come into my... you lose all the customers. I mean, they would say things like that. So yeah, I wish that I had done more rollover of some of these stocks, sold with the stocks of the company. But anyway, mostly it was cash, to your question.
Do you think that you would have been able to, if you do a deal for $10 million in cash, do you think that you would have been able to, that those people, those founders would have actually taken your stock?
Yeah,
that's the other side. It would have been nice, but a lot of them say, "Look, I don't want your stock. I don't know when I'll get out of your stock. I want cash. I want to change my life now." Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not for $10 million, but for maybe 8. So give them 8 in cash and 2 in stock.
So give them that second bite of the apple kind of a thing that help me grow this thing, right?
Correct. And I did it because one of the founders insisted he said, I want a second bite at the apple. And I was like, so no, you can't do this. I mean, that's not how we do business and all that. And now looking back, I feel that he was the most engaged and one of, fully aligned, all the way through compared to anybody else. So it's pretty interesting.
When you did the later, what you called the bulk up acquisitions, were those done with cash or stock?
Oh, that was with a lot of the PE money. And also we did, we always took majority control, just like I gave up majority control, but there was a significant portion of equity rolled over by those founders.
I see. When you took how much of your company did you wind up selling to PE before the ultimate buyout?
Yeah. So they came to me and they said, well, how much do you want to sell? I said, well, I want to sell 80%, right? If I'm going to exit, I want a good exit. So they said, no, we want to buy 51%. I said, well, not happening because you'll have control.
You broke up when you said how much you wanted to sell.
80. I wanted to sell 80, right? And they said, no, we cannot give you any more than 50. We want to buy 51.
Okay.
So I said, no, that's not going to work for me. So
what year was this?
2015.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So all right.
Yeah. So I said, I'm not going to do that because I don't have control on my destiny once you own 51%. So they did a leverage buyout, and where we took significant debt on the company, and I took it all off the table. So I basically got about 90% of the value of the company.
I see.
And still own 49% of the stock.
Wow.
Yes.
Nice deal.
Yeah.
And you obviously, from a leverage standpoint, you obviously had the cash flow to service the debt, which made it so attractive. Yeah.
Correct. It puts more pressure on the business and so on, but we didn't have any problem at all. And then we actually did a couple more deals like that, which everybody kind of got diluted a little bit, but we got those founders in to also roll part of their equity into the business.
Yeah.
And but over 60-70% in those cases, and that was it resulted in an organization we eventually sold for almost 3x in terms of multiple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. So that was.
What did you do? So what was I going to ask you? Oh, when did you eventually did you sell out your 49%?
Oh, so in 2018 is when Cognizant, they're a large IT firm, they came and bought us out completely.
They bought the whole thing out. Okay. Well, it sounds like you did pretty well. Now you've got bigger problems, right? Now like you said, I love your comment. You said, what good is money anyway that's just sitting in the bank?
What is exactly right? And but then also the first time around, you got a bunch of things to prove, right? So, there is the excitement for sure. Being an entrepreneur is very exciting, but you also have anxiety because what happens? You might not have food on the table tomorrow. That's an exaggeration, but right? Things could really go south.
Yeah.
This time around, there is all the excitement and no anxiety. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's really good. That's good. So it's like you're saying, it's like being a gambler playing with house money, right? That's
Something
what it
like
kind of comes down to.
Exactly.
So let's go back to this. Let's close with this. I just really want to have a discussion around, I love that comment about what good is the money in the bank anyway? It just sits in the bank. Okay. So now you're in that position now. You said you really have an interest in the community and in helping entrepreneurs, right? And I think this whole Silicon Road is all part of that, not only helping entrepreneurs, but helping investors who can benefit from that and helping businesses that are interested in innovation, right? You've got all of this going on, which is pretty exciting. So how does that roll into, how did that interest come your way? How did that become, this is moving from operator who's serving clients and employees to now this investor, if you will, or almost community developer, I see you as, okay, as versus just an investor or fund manager. How did you get to that community developer sort of motivation?
I yeah. So my overall vision, and I should say, Sophie and our mission is to really make an impact, and that impact would be on society, around entrepreneurship, and also around helping disadvantaged women, children, primarily. Those are the big areas we want to focus on, and
So entrepreneurship, what else?
and then also disadvantaged women and children.
Okay.
And so with that kind of a broad definition of how we want to make an impact, actually I personally wear multiple hats. And the whole thing with the venture fund is definitely a full-time job, but that's only one of the things I'm doing, as you know, actively involved with the foundation work, with the family office that we have, which is, in your introduction, you talked about Silver Spirit Global. That is our family office.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay, good. Thank you.
So we own some real estate in Midtown Atlanta and a bunch of, mostly stock market investments and so on. So that's what we do.
Do you manage the family office? Or do you have somebody that's doing? Is it your CFO from the other business?
No, I have somebody who is helping us part time, and then and Shanish is very involved with it also, our son. So which is very helpful. But we are not doing enough there. Meaning, I need more help there. But anyways, that's a different.
This is off the subject of my question. But how does somebody like Shamish, sit there and look at the net worth of the family and stay motivated? Because this is one thing I see from a lot of entrepreneurs that I know that have done very well. They're really worried about their kids, and I've seen it where kids just say, well, I'm always going to be rich. I don't have to do anything. So how does this affect him? And have you had conversations with him around all that?
I have had conversations with him, and we're very fortunate that he's very balanced in how he looks at it. Mm-hmm. You and I have enough gray hairs, and the main way in which we got to gray hairs is by learning how to examine people and figure out what their motivations could be, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to judge them. And I have been very pleasantly surprised with Janish and the way he thinks about stuff like this. The most revealing thing to me was we have a foundation, and because it's a private foundation, we have to spend 5% of the corpus every year, as you know, right? So one of the things Sophie and I decided was that we'll allocate a fixed amount to both Shanish and Sheena, and they get to decide where that money goes. So they begin to understand how all this works, and begin to think with that mindset. And when I went to Shanish, he said, I already don't spend all my salary, and I already have. He gives out money to 5 different charities every month. I mean, that kid is 27 years old. It blew my mind, Charlie.
I bet it did.
I'm so proud of him. And so he said, yeah, here are the 5. I mean, I already do it every month. I said, you, from your salary, you give out money every month. He said, yes. And so he's that kind of a person. But yeah, I mean, I think that he definitely is somebody who will have to keep looking out for that, and, not to get too complacent. And be able to continue down.
He must have also, when he worked for Intel, he was out in Silicon Valley, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, he must have seen other examples of other kids his age, and seen, what decisions they made and what their parents were doing and what their lives were looking at. So he must have some wisdom, beyond what you even imparted to him.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Because our kids don't live in a vacuum,
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Absolutely. But they're influenced heavily by you. So tell me, so when you talk about, I'm going to do entrepreneurship, as a community development, but also disadvantaged women and children, most of what I see you're doing seems to be entrepreneurship.
That's right.
Because that's your ministry, if you will. That's what you do.
That's right.
Okay. The other piece is just basically, are you involved in the other piece of disadvantaged women and children?
Mostly
Sophie. I'm there? Huh?
Mostly Sophie. Mostly
Sophie.
That's right.
So is that the split? She does that And you do entrepreneurship?
No, it's not like, I mean, it's not laid out like that, but yeah, that's how it is playing out right now. Yes.
It goes down to our interests, I guess, is what it comes down to. And that's what we want to do. So there's freedom now that you guys have this wealth. But yeah, I just it's interesting to me is how do you measure this impact that if you say, I really want to have an impact on our community, do you have big goals in place that say, this is going to be, if I could achieve these, then I know I really was successful?
No, I don't.
As a community developer, if you will.
No, I mean, it's one small step at a time. Keep our eyes open and be open to different opportunities and ways to make that difference. I'd be vain to imagine that I know everything that there is to know in this. And there are lots of great people. I mean, hats off to what you are doing, Charlie, with the Angel Lounge. Again, these are all things that you don't need to do. They don't make you rich.
Right.
But, so, I mean, I learn a lot from people like you. And who knows? I mean, we try to make a difference, and it's not always about measuring it. It's about making progress. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah, I think that's, there's that book that had become so famous. I don't know if you ever read it, called Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yes.
And his whole point in that book is it's not the big things that you do that have impact. It's what you do every day. It's those little things that sort of add up to making you, have that big impact or be successful in a lifetime. And I think you're right there that it is. It's just what we do every day. And as long as we keep doing what we do every day, it's going to have impact, probably beyond our expectations.
Exactly. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah. Well, this has been brilliant. Really, I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Likewise, this is a great honor, and thank you for having me here.
Man, I've learned so much from you. I'm going to summarize. If you want to stick around, I'll summarize something that I learned from you and about you. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And then if you hold on, when I stop the recording, I'll just catch up with you and we'll be done. You got a minute?
Sounds good. Yes.
Okay, good. So thanks for joining us today. This was a great interview, and there was so much that I pulled out of this. I looked and I say, what's this man? What is Sid's motivation? And it really comes down to wanting to make an impact. And he told us the impact was for entrepreneurs and disadvantaged women and children, and they do it as a partnership, him and Sophie, his wife. And then I was thinking about watching what makes Sid successful. And I think it's this ability to pick great people. Right from the beginning, he looked at the people he was working with in Madison, saying, I know so many great people out here that are underutilized, and I see so many great people in India in the same position. I wonder what we can do together. And then how he chose his leaders in the business as it grew, and then eventually partners. I mean, this is just skills that he had that just sort of God developed for him, and off he went with them. So this has been a great interview. I've learned so much about a great man in our community, and we're blessed to have him. So thanks for joining us. Please sign up at paparelli.com and you not miss this episode or any going forward. Thank you.